Hey everyone, thanks for joining me for another devlog for Dauphin, my 2D RPG about a marine biologist that I'm building with the Godot engine. I'm kicking off this week here on a Monday evening just after dinner, and I'm looking at hopefully about an hour's worth of dev time before winding down for the night. Before I jump in, I do want to give you all a quick recap of what we worked on in the last episode, which was unfortunately a handful of weeks ago. In that last episode, I actually made some really great progress on the foundation of a feature that I've been super excited to add to Dauphin for quite some time now, and that is the ability for the player to place objects into the world. And you can see that that's the case here with this tent that I have selected in my item bar. When I have a placeable object selected, it will follow the mouse around the screen and change its color based on whether or not you've dragged it to an acceptable location for placement. When it is an acceptable location, you'll see just the rendered model with a slight translucent effect, and if you left click, you'll place it right there into the world. My main goal with this feature is to allow the player to set up campsites at newly discovered islands. Doing so will create a save point for the player as well as a fast travel point so that the player can easily revisit islands they've discovered in the past. As you saw in the demo there, I'm off to a pretty good start, but I still have a lot of work to do on my object placement task. I have the ability to place a basic placeable object into the scene with the mouse, but we ultimately need a way to be able to remove objects and place them elsewhere, and more importantly, actually save the location of objects placed by the player into the world. I'm only currently saving a handful of small things about the player at this point, so saving parts of the world itself will be something new for Dauphin. I am not biting off that chunk tonight though. I think we'll start with the ability for the player to remove objects that they've placed from the world. That'll be kind of two different parts, the actual removal of the object and some kind of UI prompt to tell the player how to do this, since we're getting a little complex with our controls here. I'm going to get started on that tonight. It will almost certainly roll over to the morning, but we'll catch up when I've made some progress. Hey everyone, checking in on Tuesday here. I've just wrapped up a pretty productive morning and I'm getting ready for work now, but as I tackled some of my development tasks, I ended up switching direction a little bit more than I thought, so I wanted to give you a quick update. As I had been thinking about how the player would remove objects that they've placed in the world, I naturally gravitated towards my existing hammer tool because the hammer is something that you generally build and take apart things with. As I started to implement that this morning, I realized that that didn't actually make any sense here because the hammer has nothing to do at all with placing objects. All the hammer does is open up the crafting menu. You actually place the object by using the crafted object from your inventory, so using the hammer for this purpose is not very intuitive. Instead, I've chosen to lean into another common practice found in games like Terraria and Minecraft, which is to use a different type of tool like a pickaxe or axe to destroy and reclaim something that you've placed in the world. As you can see, this morning I got about as far as actually creating a little pickaxe item that the player can pick up and have in their inventory, and nothing quite happens when they use it apart from it appearing in the player's hand. There's going to be a lot of work here to add new animations and state management for usage of the pickaxe, but I think it's going to be time well spent, as I've planned to have the pickaxe and other foraging tools in the game for quite a long time, as I want the player to be able to collect more types of crafting resources from the islands they explore. So that's my quick update. I do have plans after work today, so this is probably my only development session of the day. We will catch up hopefully before too long once the player is actually swinging this pickaxe. Hey everyone, fast forward to Thursday evening. It's 5 o'clock here, just wrapped up work, and I'm overdue for an update from what I worked on yesterday and this morning, so I want to get y'all caught up. So the main short-term goal here was just for the player to be able to swing the pickaxe, and I'm happy to say that after grudging through some animations, he can now swing that pickaxe in all the major directions as well as underwater, which means the player will be able to harvest resources from the ocean, which should make for some more fun crafting ingredients. To that, I'm happy to add that I managed to hit quite a stride this morning and carry that momentum into actually being able to remove a placed object from the scene using the swing of that pickaxe. So if I drop my tent somewhere into the scene here, approach it, and then swing the pickaxe, as long as the pickaxe is contacting this placeable item at the apex, or I guess really the bottom of its swing, that item will be converted back to its lootable version that the player can pick back up and put in their inventory. And we can basically do this on a loop as many times as we like, not losing the resources from creating this tent and being able to place it wherever we want. This functionality came together pretty quickly thanks in part to a pretty modular component that I probably wrote almost 2 years ago at this point called the loot table. And the loot table is something that I usually attach to organisms to allow them to drop relevant crafting materials when they're saved from corruption. In this case, I basically want all my placeable items like the tent to be able to drop a lootable version of themselves when they're destroyed. Now, if I click on this loot table and look in the inspector, you can see that I usually have a resource in here that I've crafted on a per organism basis that's ultimately just a dictionary describing what items that organism can drop and at what rates they drop. In this case, I don't have a pre-made resource for every placeable item, so I just wrote a helper function to programmatically create an instance of that resource, add the item that this placeable item is associated with to that dictionary with a weight of 1, meaning that it will always drop. And then when breakdown is called on this item when it's hit from the pickaxe, I can just call drop item from table like I usually would. This handles all the logic to spawn that item into the world and create that little animation, and that's what brought this together so quickly. Alright, I think that's enough rambling for now. I once again have plans this evening, so I'll be taking the night off here. When I come back in the morning, I will be tackling probably my last task of the devlog, which is trying to save where I'm placing these items in the world. That should be a fun one, so we will catch up soon. Alright y'all, we have made it to the weekend. It is now Saturday, just before noon here. I woke up early and had a very productive start to the day, for the most part knocking out the remainder of the development tasks I had in mind for the devlog. So let's jump in and take a look. I'm happy to say that after quite a bit of refamiliarization with my own save system that I hadn't touched in a while, I am now able to save the location of placed objects in the world when the player chooses to save the game. So as a demo here, you'll see that I'm just running the game as normal. Nothing here in this particular spot up above the research vessel on the beach. But what I can do is place a tent, maybe place a campfire, which is something fun I worked on this morning. And at this point, we can hit escape and click save and quit. This is going to save the game on disk, and when I rerun the game, with any luck, we should be able to see the tent and the fire back here in the same place. And just to test their removal, we can hit these with the pickaxe, recollect these items in our inventory, save and quit again, and relaunch. And the game world should be as it originally was without these items. Most of the logic that powers all this now lives in my base stage class, and the base stage scene is the scene from which all other main island scenes inherit when I go to create them. This script was basically empty before. I really just used this as a place to enforce what children all scenes should have, but I was happy to have a place to implement this logic, and I think it makes a lot of sense in here. I've essentially given the base stage two main responsibilities here. It needs to know how to save itself to the save manager and load itself from data within that save manager. To save itself, the first thing we do is get all nodes in the placeable group, which are going to be children of this base stage. Once we have that list of nodes, we want to save some very specific information about them, namely the item resource that describes what those scenes are, as well as their locations or global positions, so that when we load this data, we know where to put them back. Once we have all the information we need for this particular stage, we save that to the Save Manager's Stages dictionary using the name of this particular stage as the key. To load these stages and get these items set back up correctly into the world, we basically pull that information straight back out of the Save Manager exactly as we put it in. For each item in our Placeables dictionary, we create the placeable resource associated with it and ultimately instantiate the scene itself placing it back at the location that we've saved for that particular item. The result here obviously works really nicely, and what's great about it is that because it's in my base stage class that all stages inherit from, I'll never have to worry about this again when I create new stages. This will all just be handled for me. Overall, I think this was a great week's worth of progress that has set me up pretty well to create some more cool placeable items like the tent and the campfire here that the player will ultimately be able to use to customize all of the islands that they discover. Thanks so much for joining me this week, and as always, I want to give a huge shout out to the folks who support Dauphin's development and this channel on Patreon. For Cherry supporters or above this week, I'm going to post the source code for my item placer kind of manager class, as well as the placeable items themselves in case you want to develop something similar in your own project. Garami supporters this month have been Mega Ombre, Samuel SVD, Jess Sargo, Kyle Van Riper, and Sean McGuire. Beta supporters are Vlad Sunny and Cody Odin. Having made some progress this week on the forage state and some animations for swinging the pickaxe, I think we're off to a great start addressing some new functionality for the foraging skill in the next devlog, so I'll look forward to seeing y'all then.